Okay, so tops, there's probably maybe about 200 people here. I'd say maybe 200 to 250 people in this room. That would mean about 8 to 10 of you, at least people in this room, are sociopaths. According to the American Psychiatric Association, 1 in 25 people are sociopaths. Not criminals, not people in prisons, not CEOs, not politicians. 1 in 25 average people, average Americans, average people in this room are sociopaths. And the problem is this proportion of the population that have this condition is only increasing. It's increased for the past about 2 years. And a lot of you have this misconception, and it is incredibly dangerous for you as society, because a lot of you, when you think of sociopaths, you think of this. You think of some person at night that goes out, maybe kills people, goes out and actively does harm to people. Someone who you instantly know, that weird kid in your class. That is your perception of a sociopath. And that's wrong. And it's incredibly wrong. But first, a hypothetical scenario, just to make sure you're not a sociopath. Let's say that you recently got out of college, right? And let's say you're 23 years old and you start working for some tech company, let's say an RTP, and you have a huge job interview that day to get a promotion, okay? Let's say on your way to work, you're kind of running late, you realize that you left your dog at home without any water. What would you do? Your dog isn't going to die. You're going to come home, but you realize your dog is going to suffer for the rest of the day. What would you do? The vast majority of people, 24 out of 25 people, would actually turn back because you feel empathy. Because in reality, the dog isn't in danger. The dog's not going to die. But you feel empathy for your animal's pain, and so that's why you turn back. Okay, consider a man named Skip, who is a CEO of a company, incredibly charismatic, he can control a crowd with just a few mere words. If you just look at him from afar, he seems incredibly successful and an incredibly nice guy, okay. People that know him say that something's off, and people that are closest to him say that he is incredibly scary. Skip is a sociopath. Sociopaths aren't people that don't know how to control others. In fact, that's what they're good at. See, what a sociopath is someone who lacks empathy. Someone who doesn't feel guilt. What does that mean? In fact, sociopaths are some of the best manipulators in all of society. They are capable of saying what they want to say. They can control people very easily. A recent study that I read on Huffington Post, about 30% of CEOs are sociopaths. They're easily able to climb the corporate ladder because they are able to stab people in the back because they can read you and they will not feel any guilt tearing you down. Okay, so a study at Stanford University puts 100 people in this ballroom, one similar to this picture right here, and they say, okay, we're going to give you $400 if you can figure out who the sociopath in this room is, and they have one clinically proven sociopath in that room. And they give them 2 hours to go around and start walking around and try to figure out who the sociopath is. At the end of this time limit, everybody leaves except for the sociopath, and he says, give me the money. And they say, why? Because they told everybody to come back the next day with their guesses. And the sociopath says, I guarantee you no one guessed my name. And no one did. Because the sociopath is not the weirdo in the room, it's the person with the most charisma. Some incredibly well-known people turn out to be sociopaths. Vlad the Impaler, Charles Manson. A lot of psychiatrists predict that George W. Bush himself is a sociopath. Okay, so something a bit different. This is Stanley Milgram, and what he did is he presented an experiment where he takes about 50 volunteers, and he puts them in a room, and he says, we're going to run an experiment. And we're going to try giving this guy random language questions, and if he gets it wrong, you shock him. And when you shock him, you up the voltage 25 volts. And so they keep going, and obviously they didn't actually shock this person they were testing, but they increase this shock, this voltage, a little more each time, every time the person gets it wrong. And so the actor pretends he's in agonizing pain, and they go up to hundreds of volts. And if the person, the actual subject, felt bad about doing it and wanted to stop, all they did was give it a verbal prod and say, continue the experiment. How many of you think that a person would kill a person if given a verbal prompt? It turns out about roughly 60% of the people went up to over 300 to 400 volts. Killing a man, that is very capable of killing a man on sight. 60% of the population with verbal prodding would be willing to kill another man when told to, not with a gun to their head, simply by saying, please continue the experiment. And this has terrible repercussions for mass society, because now you have 4% of the population feels no guilt in controlling others and making them do what they want, and 60% of the population that's willing to go along with murder, at least in that experiment. And this is something that needs to be talked about, and this is a problem that will only get worse. It shows up in pop culture, and shows up in politics. So next time something terrible happens in politics, next time something doesn't happen, sometimes humanity isn't shown, this might be why. Thank you.